So, first of all, I'd like to say, Beverley, thank you so much for agreeing to come on our podcast today. My students and I are absolutely thrilled that you've come to help us deal with some of these difficult feelings that we have trying to pass the IELTS test. So maybe we could start. I think there are lots of different feelings that we want to talk about today, but I guess the main one which all of us face when we take a test is just this idea of stress. So maybe we could start by just talking a little about what stress is and how it affects us, and maybe what we can do to cope with that stress.
Yes, I'm happy to talk about this. So there are different kinds of stress, and the word covers so many different things. Mm-hmm. So, to be clear, if a tiger was leaping out at me, mm-hmm. It would be absolutely appropriate to be 100% stressed and to run for your life, right, or run for cover. Yeah. But the kind of stress normally that we have in our lives is a stress that there's a trigger, and then what that sets off is a whole lot of internal conversation. Mm-hmm. And most of it is negative, painful, frightening, and creates more and more stress. So, as animals, we're designed very much to have a flash of stress, run from the tiger, hide from the avalanche, bash the would-be murderer, run, hide, or be terribly sweet to them so that they don't kind of attack us again. We have these instant things, and then it can go through our body. We might have a shaking attack, we might get very hot and cold, we might get very thirsty, we might sleep, but it can run through our system quite quickly. Right. The kind of stress we have a lot in modern life is the cycle is perpetuated. It's renewed and renewed and renewed by the internal conversation we have, yes? So we have the thought of, and a lot of this internal conversation is to do with the future, right? What we're afraid of, what we anticipate, or it's to do with the past. What I got wrong, what I should have done differently, what I didn't do. Yeah,
that's very interesting, because I think for my students that there's particularly ones who maybe have taken the test and failed, there's that regret from the past test, but then that carries forward, exactly as you said, to the idea of what's going to happen next time, and then that builds and builds, as you said, in this really difficult cycle.
Yeah. So a lot of stress like this takes the form of, I'll take the example of someone sitting an exam. Is, an exam approaches, it's very loaded with meaning. So we give it enormous meaning. A lot is weighing on it. My future, my family's love for me, yes, my identity as a person, as a competent person, will I be able to have a family, will anyone love me and want me and rely on me? We build this huge edifice on this one thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So before we're even in the room, we've frightened ourselves. Exactly. And then we might have, if we struggled a bit at school, or if we did very well at school, other people's expectations are weighing on us. They all expect me to do well. Mm-hmm. Or the words of a teacher saying, you're useless anyway, why are you even bothering? Our mind goes back to past exams, past tests, past times we were evaluated in any way whatsoever. You're maybe the youngest kid in the class, the tallest girl in the class, the lippiest kid in the class, somewhere you've had criticism. That was for you. Yeah. Criticism for being who you are. So when you face an exam, an examination, it's as if you are being examined.
Honestly, even as you're talking then, I can feel my heart rate rising, and I can feel myself physically becoming stressed. I think everything you've described is what we put, it's even the word exam is enough to just generate those negative feelings, isn't it?
Yeah. So, the truth is somewhere near the middle, which is you've worked very hard to learn things. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a place where finding out how much you've retained is going to be quantified, and you're going to get some feedback. You can find we call it non-catastrophizing language.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So what does that mean? Just to help the students, a catastrophe is like a disaster.
What we do is we look to the future and we create a catastrophe. So I look to the future and go, oh, if I fail this exam, oh, I may never get another chance. My family will just be raging with me. They won't love me. The girl I want to marry me, or the man I want to marry, won't want me. I know I'm useless. It confirms everything I've always thought about myself. It's going to be the worst thing that ever happened. It's the end of me. It's the end of my career. I'll have to go and sweep the roads. And then, so it goes from being a catastrophe of events, my life is over. I mean, this isn't an exaggeration. It can really feel like this.
Oh, and I know, like, as you're speaking, I know this is what you're saying is so interesting, because it's exactly what so many students tell me it feels like.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a bit why it feels like this in a moment. But it goes from being a catastrophe of events to a catastrophe of identity. Wow. So it goes very easily from, well, I'm useless, I'm worthless, I'm a disappointment. I am a disappointment to my parents. I am a failure. I am a failure. So it goes from being a description of circumstances that have occurred in my life to facts about myself. We turn it into facts about myself. So
you're using a lot of nouns there. I am a failure, a catastrophe. Like, this is now my identity.
Yes. Because when bad things happen to people, we take on the badness as if I am a bad person. And this especially happens to children. You know, in the UK decades ago, the advice to parents was, don't say to your child, you're a bad girl, bad boy. You say, that was not a good thing you did. That was a very harmful, dangerous, unkind thing you did. Let's look at how you could do a better thing. Not you are a bad person. But I wanted to say something about why we can get stuck in the catastrophe.
Yes, that's interesting.
Scenario.
So why is that?
When we get even a little bit anxious, actually, our vision comes in a little bit. We lose some peripheral vision.
Wow.
You know, people say their heartbeat pounds. A lot of the body processes, they start to focus on core processes. So your limbs might get a bit cold or a bit tingly or something. You lose some frequencies of hearing.
Wow.
So
is that right?
So as we get anxious, you can imagine we hone into the core processes. You know, the body goes, uh-oh, emergency, you know, pull in the tentacle.
That's just so interesting, because part of, you know, the IELTS test is a listening exam. And I know a lot of my students say they struggle in the listening test. And that makes sense, because if they are high level of stress, you, like you say, like your ability to, how do you describe it? That your ability, like
you actually lose some auditory frequencies.
Wow.
So it gets trimmed down, but then your speech becomes very selective. So you will be in survival mode, selecting only for words that have some relationship to your survival. So somebody can be going on and on and on and on. You kind of miss half of it. You're in a bit of a fog.
Yeah. Okay, this is answering. So this is unbelievable, because that actually answers a lot of questions. Students say, I don't know why I can't focus in the exam. I'm losing attention. And that always shocked me, because I was thinking, but of all the places you want to focus, it's an exam.
Yeah.
But if there's this connection between stress and ability to focus, then that makes complete sense.
Yes. And the things you will focus on will be ones that only relate to your ongoing subliminal narrative, which is, I'm in danger, I've got to survive this, I've got to survive this, I've got to survive this. If I fail this, I'm doomed. If I fail this, I've got to do okay. I've got to, do you hear? So that's running. That's taking up all the wavelengths, you might say.
Like all your brain energy is just running that story. Okay. Wow.
And you might be sweating, so people start to think, oh my God, does my sweat show? You know,
yeah, exactly.
You know, women are dripping and men are the underarms, and it all gets really uncomfortable. Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's so interesting. So basically, so everything kind of like when you're in this stressed state, everything, like you say, narrows, because we're in survival mode.
Yes. Yeah, you are. Because as social mammals, you know, our place in the order of things and our place in our families and our need to belong and to feel we're of value is incredibly important. And as children, our survival depends on it. Yes. So this is entirely forgivable and entirely natural. This is not a character flaw. This is not a weakness. This is entirely natural. But what we can do then is use entirely natural means to take countermeasures.
That was going to be my next question. So if there, you know, if this feeling of stress is, as you said, like completely natural, you know, I guess when I think about people who are very successful, I mean, I used to be an athlete, and one of the things that I struggled with was that I did suffer very badly from nerves. And I see this is quite similar to this exam situation, right? Like you're in this high pressure environment where you need to do your best, but your body is like working against you because you start shaking, or like you say, sweating.
Yes.
And it's, when you need to be fully focused, that's the time when your body starts letting you down. So what can we do then in this situation, like to sort of balance this stress? Is it possible?
Very, absolutely.
Oh, good.
And what I would say that there are literally hundreds of things you can do. They're mostly very simple and quite quick, but they also get easier and way more effective with time. So the more you do them, the more natural they become, until hopefully they become your habit. And as you go into the exam, you just go, okay, here we go, switch on all your techniques, and you're off, you know?
Really?
Yeah. But the thing is, you know, I would encourage people to really practice, just practice them in every day, every situation imaginable, you know, on a bus, walking down the street, anywhere, in the middle, you know, in the middle of a conversation, you can run these in parallel.
So they're that quick, really?
That quick and that simple. There's 3 levels. So you can come at this from what we call the somatic level, which is dealing directly with your body's reaction, like working directly with that. So there's several exercises I could describe to do that. Then there are exercises that deal with the internal conversation, what we call the negative self-talk.
Yeah, that's something I think is really important.
So this is huge. And I have to say, I used to have this a lot suddenly in my early 30s, I realized I'd slipped into it. I had a very strange job, a job that I was finding very difficult. And I really noticed every time I was driving to work, this negative self-talk would set up. And I noticed it was happening, and I had to just literally get a handle on it. I had to just get to grips with it. And over time, it really worked. It's really worked.
And you could. That's what I think is amazing. It's not just that you recognized it, but you were then able to counteract it.
I've used all these techniques myself, and I have to say they really work. And
and then the third level? The
third level is to use some art making, is to use your body's natural, absolutely from childhood ability to just put something outside your body with your hands. This is a natural, you know, we're spatial. We live entirely in space. Right. We communicate entirely through space, through sound, through gesture, through movement. So to make marks is completely instinctive. And it's nothing to do with being artistically trained or skilled. It's a completely different thing.
I have to say that over the last couple of months, I've started doing some different art therapies, and I am not an artist at all, but I have found real peace and from just, like you say, making marks, just that process is extremely therapeutic. So, you know, if anybody listening, if you're thinking, I can't draw, it's not about drawing. It's not about that. No. It's just about getting things which are inside you, I guess, out and onto the paper in a way.
If you imagine you were a wolf, for example, and you just had a very, very scary hunt with the pack, and before you flop down to relax, you kind of walk in some circles, or you scuffle, you sway a bit, you do some kind of wolfy movements to kind of de-stress. And in the sand or on the forest floor, there are tracks left. There are sort of patterns left from your swaying and your pacing, and then you lie down and have a sleep. So the kind of art I'm talking about is more like animal tracks. That you're gonna do something, natural movements for the body that involve symmetry and the rhythm of your breathing. And when you stop, you'll have a drawing on paper.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So maybe what we could do, so you sort of said now, the first one.
Three levels. Three levels.
First one is somatic.
Yes, so soma is I don't know, is it Greek or something for the body?
I think it is.
Somatic just means, so when people talk about somatic exercises, they mean exercises where you focus not on anything outward, like a shape or something. You focus on the internal sensations inside your body. Oh, I've got a gurgly tummy, or oh, my shoulders feel tense, or I feel a bit queasy. These internal processes.
So do you think maybe, so like, would now be a good time maybe that you could give us an example of one of these exercises that we could do?
So I'll take you through a few.
Amazing.
So immediate, if you catch yourself anywhere, in any situations, beginning to get stressed or really low, here's a good one. I don't know what this will sound like on the recording. But you purse your lips and you breathe out very slowly, as if you're blowing up a very thin balloon. Right to the end of your breath.
Okay, so let me just describe that. So purse your lips, that's quite a difficult expression, but that just means we're putting our lips together almost so they're completely closed, but there's just a little hole, like as Beverley said, you're blowing a balloon.
A very thin, delicate balloon.
And do we blow hard, or we just blow?
No, you blow gently and steadily and evenly, but right to the end of your breath. So you take a good, you don't have to inhale a lot. You inhale and then you're gauging it. You're breathing out evenly but steadily.
Consistently. All right, so let's do this one together. So we're going to breathe in, and then like a very thin balloon, we're going to blow out steadily and consistently. Okay, that does feel nice. What is it about that action that helps us de-stress?
So do 3 of those. What that does is, it is impossible physically when you're doing that to inhale shallow and fast.
Right, which is what we do when we're really stressed, isn't it? Okay.
So in order to give yourself a panic attack, you have to start hyperventilating. You have to start breathing too fast, too shallow.
Okay, so that is as simple as it gets. I only did 1 and I already feel more relaxed. So I can imagine if you were starting to panic, 3 of those breaths would probably just immediately start to bring you back down.
Absolutely. So, you know, if the students are in any kind of medical line, this is just basically working with the body's physiology, you know, natural physiology.
We've got a lot of doctors.
That's great. So this is really important because, you know, when people go to hospital, they often get very anxious about going to hospital, or they could sit in the wait. You know, you could have a poster in the waiting room saying, try this.
Yeah.
Breathe out into your mask at the moment. It's maybe not so good. But, you know, in theory, on the way to the hospital. So another one's using your hands are very good. So another one is to, you take your right hand and you tuck it right under your left armpit. Quite a tight hug, a firm hug.
Okay.
You take your left hand and you just wrap it around and lay it on your upper arm or your shoulder. Upper arm is good. So in this, you can give yourself a real baby squeeze.
Yeah, right.
If you want to feel really secure, give yourself a real bear. Really give yourself a squeeze. And you'll feel the natural impulse is to breathe out, is to exhale, to sigh. And then you can relax it, and you can even give yourself a little stroke.
So it's almost like I'm sort of hugging myself and physically telling myself, not just mentally, but physically telling myself, you are safe and you are okay.
Yeah. And there's someone here who cares about you.
Yeah.
So I understand that, you know, when all the biometrics are done, you know, that the body can't tell whether someone else is hugging you or whether you're stroking yourself. The skin just goes, oh, lovely, lovely, more, please. You know, that's nice. That reminds me of, you know, some warm parental husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, teddy bear stuff, you know. Yeah, stroking your pet dog. Or...
I'm just imagining all my students in the writing test now just quietly sitting and hugging themselves when they read the question.
You can do this. You could self-soothe and make sure you're breathing out while you're reading the questions. Read the questions very slowly, because then you'll be taking in all the information.
Right.
And your own internal narrative won't be narrowing the focus before you even start.
I don't think you realise how significant what you just said is, because even my best students, they come out of the test and they don't get the scores that I expect from them. And 99% of the time it's because they didn't read the question carefully. And they didn't actually answer the question they were given. They half answered it because, as you said, they narrowed it down because their brain was probably panicking. So I think this sounds amazing. Like, you know, as you said, you know, just as you're reading the questions, put that right hand under your armpit, just hug yourself.
Because you look like you've just got your arms crossed in a slightly different way.
Like you're in a cold air-conditioned room and you're just trying to keep yourself warm a little bit.
The other thing is to sit in a very balanced way. So your spine is kind of supple, but you can, there's a lovely phrase, leaning inside yourself, leaning back against your spine, not the chair. You can lean against the chair, but leaning back against your spine as if it was the back of a chair. So you just let things relax inside you a little bit. That's maybe a bit more subtle, but this is good, this one, you know. Another one is to put your hand on your heart. Wow. And one on your navel.
So was it your right hand? So you're crossing over your body, your right hand on your heart and then your left on your navel?
Do you know, it doesn't matter. I'm left-handed, so I did it like that. But one open palm on your heart, just enough pressure so you can feel it in the middle of your body. Yeah, and heart, the center of your body. So you're a bit up to that side, but if you do it right on the middle.
A bit more in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle. And then one over your navel and press a bit. Again, this is like telling the body you are held.
Yeah, it's similar to the last one, isn't it? In a way, it's just that external pressure on your.
And just make sure you're giving yourself time to exhale. A little tip is, if you inhale for 3 or 4, you exhale for 4 or 5. So you exhale like one more beat than you inhale. You make sure your exhale is ever so slightly longer than your inhale. I
think I've put a breathing technique up on one of the old blog posts that we've got about staying calm, and it uses that method. I think it's you breathe in for 7 and you breathe out for 8 or something like that.
That principle, yes. So whatever is easiest and comes to mind, you know. The danger of not reading, I mean, examiners always used to just say this again and again and again, read the question 3 times, always read it 3 times, read it slowly, scribble some notes, then go back and read it again. Because when you're in survival mode, let me see, you reach for what you know.
Yes.
You know, someone comes at you, knife in my back pocket. That's a very bad example. That's a very bad example.
Not all English people carry knives in their back pocket.
No, I was thinking of the tiger scenario. Or you reach for, you know, you see someone and you think, oh, potential mugger, you kind of grab your handbag a bit tighter to your body. Yes. You do something, you reach for what you know, which is very small and limited and precise. So if you imagine you're reading an exam question in that mode, then you can't wait to spew out the knowledge you've got, regardless of whether the question's asking you for it or not.
This is, you know, I think this is what happens. I look at it as this is kind of changing my opinion about everything as well, which is amazing, because I look at this when students, they see a question topic about obesity, which is a classic IELTS question, and then they just go to their brain and they take their sort of like pre-remembered ideas about obesity, but for this question they may have changed the direction of the question, so those ideas don't match. I've always looked at that as like maybe laziness, like you're just using what you already know. But now I understand it's not laziness, it's just survival. Like, yes, I've got these tools, let's use them quickly.
Absolutely. Right. You know, I mean, you know, in some parts of the world, I mean, I don't agree with this, but I know that I've been to some parts of the world where, you know, there's a lot of street dogs, you know, questionably with rabies, and the advice is to just throw a small stone at them, carry a couple of small stones and throw them. Some people throw big, you know, I don't like it, and I've never done it actually, but I've seen people do it, and it does, you know, the dog just backs off, but it's an instinct. You just have a couple in your pocket. So it's that throwing what you've got at it rather than saying, what are they asking me for?
Yeah, what does this dog need, or what is it? Okay,
yes, yes. And also, yeah, I mean, there's a good argument here. This is digressing, but there's a good argument here for, you know, changing the form of exams to, you know, what do you know about? You know, tell us what you know rather than you know, or in the case of, I was in an exam once asked, you know, please describe the life cycle and daily habits of a dragon and habitat of a dragon, of dragons. So of course it's a nonsense question, except you use all the principles you've learned from ecology. Well, you know, it's not in the middle of a forest.
That's so clever, though.
You're asked to demonstrate the principles that you've gleaned from everything you've learned, rather than just the facts.
Right. So you're sort of, yeah, exactly. That's kind of testing your ability to imaginatively apply the principles that you've learned, rather than just regurgitating that information.
I also wanted to say, in your environment, when you're studying, try and have something from nature. Always try and have something from nature.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because about 2 or 3 months ago, I bought a lot of houseplants. And it was such a simple thing that I did, but it really made a difference. My whole apartment feels different now. So why, I mean, apart from the fact that plants are nice, why would you recommend that students have something from nature around them while they study?
Because you are a living organism. And what happens is, in anxiety, we become very sort of robot-like. We go into automatic pilot, and, you know, we cut our senses off. We cut us. So anything that draws you back to nature is really helpful. I also have lots of beautiful objects in my, this is polished wood. I have lots of lovely objects in my therapy room. And when people are talking about stressful things, I invite them to take something to hold on to.
So Beverley was just holding up there some really sort of beautiful wooden, they look like eggs, and maybe some stones, which probably feel nice and smooth in your hand.
Yeah, very smooth. The wood, all the wooden objects I have are very warm and very smooth. And the marble egg and the pebble, heart-shaped pebble, are very cool. So I invite people that when they're talking or thinking about something stressful or uncomfortable, that because there's a wooden dolphin as well. That's because cute. You know, we use the phrase of there's nothing to hold on to. You know, if I fail, I'm just lost in space. I've got nothing to hold on to. I'm all on my own here. Having something to hold on to, I don't think you could be stopped from walking into an exam with a warm, cool pebble in your hand.
They're a bit strange in arts, but yeah, maybe you would be able to have that, because it's obviously not an electrical device or recording device, but even just to practice holding on to that stone.
And you can really squeeze it, so you can really have the feeling of your body goes, if you tense your hand and you hold on, you'll notice the rest of your body can relax.
So you're putting all that tension.
All the tension's here.
Okay, that's a super easy thing to do. And I just picked up a beautiful stone from the beach, actually, and I was doing the same thing, and I think maybe I'll put it on my desk now. So when I'm stressed, I can just hold on to that.
Yes, because we use these things in our language. The language is a key. I need something to hold on to, or to get a grip. Get a grip of yourself.
Get a grip.
Don't get a grip of yourself. Get a grip of something.
Okay, again, that's really simple. So I think there we've got, some really nice, simple techniques, just breathing out slowly through these, like you're blowing up this very thin balloon, or holding yourself in the 2 techniques. I think they're really fantastic and simple things that we can use, not just as we practice, but even in the exam room, which I think is fantastic.
Absolutely.
I think just before we started recording, we spoke a little bit about this idea of the difference between shame and guilt. Is that what you want to talk about now?
I'll just mention it briefly. So this is to
I think that's great.
So mostly as children, some bad stuff has happened to us. We may have had wonderful parents, loving grandparents, or not. But even the best parents or family or teachers, every now and then we'll lose it, and you might have been slapped, you might have been made to feel like you were useless, you might have been told, oh, I give up on you, you might have been excluded from the classroom, so but actually the loss of control by somebody else, or you might have been blamed for something some other kid did, that's a common one, and got punished, or so you might have got locked out of your house through no fault, or you might have been hit by a car, all sorts of things can happen to us, and even far worse things, which I won't go into. But what happens is, when bad stuff happens to children, they feel like bad people. We feel like we're a bad person. So what I wanted to say is, when we enter a stressful situation, it doesn't just trigger the body reaction in the moment, somewhere in us, we can be triggered from serious previous stressful situations, including past traumas.
Mm-hmm.
So we can have a much bigger reaction than this current situation warrants.
Right.
Yeah?
So that stress is basically sort of taking us back to that stored stress or shame that we've got from way back, and we may not even realize it, maybe.
Yeah.
Consciously.
So the thing about guilt, and hopefully, gradually more parents are becoming aware of this, is that guilt is a feeling we have. It's a natural human emotion when we've done something, I'd say bad, I'd say harmful,
Mm-hmm.
either to someone else, something else, or ourselves. We have a feeling of guilt. Oh, I didn't do that well. That was not a good thing to do for me, in any way. And guilt is a very useful thing, like, noticing, I spoke to that person really harshly.
Mm-hmm.
Or I kicked that dog. I should have just sort of shouted a bit and said, clear off,
Mm-hmm.
And I lashed out, and that was not, whatever we've done. And guilt is very good because you can pause and you can go, okay, I can do better next time. I can watch my temper.
Right.
I can say sorry. I can just say sorry. I can just make a phone call and say, I'm really sorry. Spoke to you in an unnecessarily unkind way. Something.
So it's like, so then is guilt sort of then like our natural way of measuring our own behavior and kind of saying, you could have done better on that occasion, and next time we'll do it differently.
Yeah. So, as social mammals, again, always monitoring where we are in the pack, in the crowd, in the family. It's useful to know when you've really overstepped. Oh, that wasn't very good. That wasn't very nice of me. And I know it can be overlaid with a lot of very strong, often religious kind of rules that we've broken. But the thing is, guilt is about something you've done. Oh, I didn't do so well there. I'm going to take some action to kind of put it right, or watch my behavior next time. Shame is about who you are.
Okay.
Shame is I've somehow, because of what I did, I'm a bad person. I've got to hide myself. I've got to cover we talk about being covered with shame.
Yes, we do. That's right.
People withdraw inside themselves. They refuse to talk about something because they can't even talk about the thing they did because they're too ashamed. I'm too ashamed to speak about it. Yeah. Shame for social mammals, if you imagine, but withdrawing is incredibly painful, and it's as bad as physical pain. Wow. I think the medical students will be able to tell you that on some tests, the physiological and the brain activity connected to deep shame and this social withdrawal is as bad as physical pain, is similar to physical pain.
Wow.
So this is what happens. So when we get very stressed about a forthcoming event, you can see how, if we've already got shame running, I'm really not cut out to be a doctor. I may not be good enough. Or am I good enough? Global, am I good enough as a person, let alone as a doctor or a nurse or a teacher? Yeah,
it moves from that one particular event to you as a whole being, doesn't it?
Do I even have a right to be on the planet, to take up space, to eat food? It can lead to the suicidal spiral. So get awake to shame. It's a nasty, wake up to it. And basically, I would say the antidote to shame is to say, you're here. You got yourself born. You got yourself born. Life, God, and the universe got yourself born. Welcome.
Yeah.
You're meant to be here. You're meant to be here. So get over yourself. You're meant to be here. And all the rest is overlay. Yeah.
I think the way that I've experienced shame with my students is often students who come to me having failed.
Yes.
And then they have this feeling of shame. And I'm not, I always try and do my best. Like, I care so much that my students feel emotionally okay, because I actually don't think you can perform well or actually pass the test until you start to feel better about yourself. And the way that I would always say to a student is, look, and I really want to know if you think this is the right or the wrong thing to do, because I don't know. But, if a student comes to me and says, I've failed, I just hate myself, I don't know what to do. My response is, listen, you put yourself out there. You decided that you wanted to change your life. That is not an easy thing to do. You prepared for this test. You sat that test. That already puts you way ahead of 99% of the population who are just sat accepting their life. So you've got to be like, feel positive about that. And just because you didn't pass this time doesn't mean that you won't pass. Is that the right approach? I don't know, you know?
Well, I'd say yes, but so what I'd like to say, I think, is what the principle you're using there is you're interrupting their negative self-talk and you're reframing the situation. You're giving a different context to the situation and you're describing it in positive self-talk. Yes. So that's the key. So the jump from I failed this test, and what was it? I'm a useless person.
I'm useless. I'm no good. So it's usually that feeling of worthlessness.
Can you hear the jump from I failed this test? I might feel a little guilty. Maybe I didn't do as much work as I could have done. Right. Or I'm disappointed. All the other words. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. I'm fed up. I'm a bit angry. I'm going to have to study a bit more. You know, all the whole range of things. But the jump to I'm useless. Can you hear? It jumps to, this is not about what I did or didn't do. It's become a now. It's about me as the core as a human being.
Yeah, and almost like you have no power then. If you say I'm useless.
Exactly. You've sucked it in and it's become your identity. So that's the bit to break, to go, whoa, hang on a minute. You know, you are much more than everything you do.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, do you want to, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about this negative self-talk?
Yes.
That to me sounds like it could be the real key. Like you say, like if you can reframe.
Yes. So again, it's almost as if, you know what I said about when you get very anxious and stressed, your sensory perception, your actual physical capacities kind of narrow in. So it's a bit like our thoughts narrow in. So we go to sit this test, and in that moment, it's as if the whole of our future hangs on this.
Yeah.
We forget we are a living organism. In fact, we are a colony of colonies of organisms. There are an infinite number of processes going, well, there's trillions of processes going on here. We have an infinite number of possibilities and directions our life might take. Yeah? You know? And we forget that, and it's like, this is the only doorway open to me in the whole of my life. I'm 25, I'm 30, I'm 35. I'm 45. This is the only doorway open to me. Everything hinges literally on this, opening this one door. So, where was I? Coming back to negative self-talk. So then we create this, you know, if I can't, so then somehow our whole existence comes to be related to this.
Definitely.
So one of the things is to counter negative self-talk is to sit back and look around.
Yeah.
To look around, if you look around the room, you'll see 1,000,001 things you didn't put there. I didn't put the windows here. I didn't put the floor here. You know, I didn't put the table here. I didn't make a pen. Where did the paper come from? An entire universe has just come to your aid to create an exam room so you can sit an exam. You didn't do any of it, you lazy sons. You just walk in to a whole universe to sit an exam. So in what way is life not supporting you?
Right. Okay. That's kind of interesting. So like, if you were going to summarize that, would it be like that you're...
Remind yourself of everything that is going on without your conscious control, that can spring into action from places you don't even know. So, you know, your life does not hinge on this one door.
I think that's really key, because I think for a lot of my students, it's like, it's this path or nothing.
Yes.
And the truth is, and I've written this at the end of some of my blog posts, and I feel sometimes I'm being negative, but I often say, even if you don't pass this test ever, your life will continue and it will contain joy and you will do other things. And I think when students become so narrowly focused, it's not actually a very positive way of helping them achieve their goals, because I think it puts too much pressure on this one event, really.
I mean, for some people, it's really helpful and it's very stirring and galvanizing to have a single focus, to really get stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who are easily distracted sometimes need single focus, go for it, yeah?
Uh-huh.
And for other people, if it's becoming a more and more intense stress and a narrower and narrower door,
yes,
it becomes very frightening. Human beings don't like to be trapped.
That's what it
Human
is.
beings don't like to feel there's no escape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So where you're making like a narrow trap for yourself. And it might be helpful to sit back and think, with all my medical education, even if I decided to go and play an instrument in an orchestra tomorrow, there might be occasions on tour when all my medical knowledge is needed.
Yeah.
You know? Do you know what I mean? I might decide to go and I might decide to sort of become a yogi and sweep the streets. And I'm going to end up clearing up endless road accidents. And I'm going to be really glad for my medical education. So is everyone else. I might even get an award from the government at the end of it. You know, it's crazy that the way life will lead you on a path like this. The other place to look is ancient fairy tales and stories.
Okay.
Ask people to remember their childhood. Remember how many stories start off, you know, where the youngest prince or princess in the family, the slightly, we say in Scottish, slightly glycit kind of, like it's a lovely North Scottish word, slightly dreamy, dopey kind of, the one everyone thinks is like the daft one and the simple one, and that, you know, sets off on a kind of not very good horse to complete the quest, you know, because everyone else has tried and failed. And they go slowly, so they stop and they ask some old person by the side of the road the right question. They get the right answer. Oh, they find the treasure. They go home and everything is sorted out, you know. The crops grow again. The king marries the queen. You know, it all works out. And nobody thought it would. They go on this winding journey, you know, endless dead ends, and, you know.
Right, and I think that's really great, because I think sometimes it's not always a straight line, is it?
No.
And I think that can be the problem, is like, you know, I think a lot of my students are like, right, I've finished my medical degree. For example, if we're talking about doctors, I finished my medical degree. Now I do my IELTS. Now I do PLAB. Now I do the next step. And it's very much boom, 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 boom. And so when something happens and that straight line isn't working, I think that's what then brings up all of this stress and difficulty. So maybe just being open to a more windy path.
If you look into stories and you look in archetypal, like in architecture and ancient art, you find the serpentine. You find this, you know, weaving backwards and forwards, and the snaking, the river. Look at how a river gets to the sea. It rarely goes straight there. It winds its way. One thing I wanted to say about that is we've had decades of flow charts from computers and industrial, you know, mechanized machines. We draw flow charts. You know, you start from here, box 1.
Yeah.
Arrows, 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 box 10, outcome. Yes. Input, outcome. Living organisms are constantly in relationship with one another. You know, you might be trying to solve a very difficult equation or write a book or diagnose an illness, and you walk mindlessly through a garden, you smell one flower and the idea comes to you.
Yes.
So life works very differently. So on your path, everything you gather on the way is relevant and is used, for sure. But I think it's a balance, isn't it? You know, having a map and a plan can be very helpful.
Yeah.
As long as you remember you're a living organism in relationship with other living organisms all the time.
Which is why we want our plants.
Oh, do you want me to say more about the inner dialogue?
It's totally up to you.
I could say a couple more things. So things to look out for is, well, I'll tell you what worked for me with one particular bit of inner dialogue was just the word stop. Every time I caught myself thinking about it, I just went stop.
And was that really, was that stop. How, and could you just stop?
With practice, yes, because it's quite a strong word. If you say it quite, you know, if you're in a car or somewhere, or, you know, you can't do it out on the street maybe, but if you're in your flat or something, you can just go stop, and you stop. You just stop it. Because if somebody was standing next to you going, oh, you're horrible, you're useless, you turn around, you say, stop.
Right.
You?
Yes, you would.
You just say, stop.
Yeah.
Please stop. This is not helpful. You know, this is, I think, the other thing is what we do is when we take so what is our fear of failure? We threaten ourselves. We're afraid of failure because we attach lots of punishment to it. Like I said, oh, the door will be closed. I'll never get a good job. What on earth will I do? My family will feel they've wasted money on me. Everyone will be disappointed. Blah, 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 blah. We attach a lot of punishment to it. Whereas if you take the living model of the serpentine, the fairy tale, where they go back on themselves again and again and again and again, they repeat things, they do the same task 3 times, 7 times. Every failure is a step on the way. There's no such thing as it's not a final failure. In fact, it's not really a failure. If you listen to people like Richard Branson and lots of top executives, they say, all my failures taught me, look out for that. That's a useful tip.
Yeah.
Or do this next time. Most of them I've heard, business gurus, they all say there's no such thing as failure. There's just learning steps. You're gathering something, then you gather something, then you gather something, and you gather something.
When I started my IELTS classroom, like my school, one of my students who is a very, very high level IT professional was talking to me about it. And he basically said, I remember once he said, well, it doesn't matter if it fails anyway. And I was really shocked because I said, well, what do you mean, Vadim? Like, this is like all of my time and all of my energy. But he says, yeah, but Shelley, if this fails, you'll know why it fails. And then you can do a better one next time. And that just totally blew my brain away and took all of the pressure away from me.
Yes.
Because I kept thinking, this has to work. This has to work. If it doesn't, what am I going to do? I've left my job. I've spent my money. But knowing that this could just be one step, suddenly the sky appeared again above me. And that really helped.
I mean, when you think in upper school, high school in the UK, we have mock exams. So in February, you sit all your A levels or your higher or whatever. You sit all the exams, and the teachers say things like, "Make all your mistakes now, so you know find out what you don't know now. Do your best, but you'll find out the gaps in your knowledge, and then in the summer, when the proper exam comes, you'll know more." So it's kind of planned failure. In fact, it's like, have a go so you know what you don't know.
Yeah. And I think I should reframe, actually. I mean, I do think that sometimes, at least if you fail, we know where you are.
Yes.
But I think maybe I've forgotten to sort of use that as much as I should have, because I think that is a very helpful way of reframing the talk that we have around a failed test, right? Maybe it's not, maybe we should stop calling it a failed test, and maybe we should call it, I don't know, a learning test, or a test where you didn't get the score you needed, a rehearsal test.
A rehearsal. They're a rehearsal, aren't they? And I think also, we don't have enough vocabulary for lots of subtle emotions, and we don't have a lot of helpful vocabulary in English. Actually, it's quite kind of, it's quite lacking in some ways, despite, I have to show you, your students.
Yes.
This is my English dictionary. Look at the size of it.
Wow. Okay.
So most English people don't know half of these. They don't know.
A tenth, I would say.
They know probably that much, so
the dictionary that Beverley is holding up is about 10 centimeters thick. It's the biggest Collins English dictionary possible.
I can hardly lift it.
Exactly. So, if we think back when we were talking about stress, we had these really great breathing activities.
Yes.
Different things. If anybody listening to this today is really deep in that feeling of shame and of, I've got to pass this test, they feel trapped and narrow. Are there any sort of practical things that we could offer those students?
Yes. One thing is to get a piece of paper and fold it in half down the middle, so you've got like 2 columns, and to write down all the nasty, unkind, brutal, punishing things, threatening things you say to yourself. So if I fail this test, I will feel I am this, I'll be that, blah, blah, blah. Write them all down, absolutely honestly. And then on the opposite side, go through and write a positive reframing of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would that look like?
So the one which is, what would be a typical one that a student would say to you?
Just it may be like, I failed. Probably something I failed. I don't know what to do, or a lot is to do with family pressure. Like I failed. My family think I'm a failure, or those kind of negative things. Like I'm useless. I will never get my dream. I'm just wasting money. Things like that.
So for I will never get my dream, you could write something like, I'm on my way to my dream, and my dream is open to changing with experience. Cool. Yeah. I'm on my way to my dream, and this is just one doorway, and there's lots of ways to it. And you reframe it like that, give it a bit more context, but put it in a use positive language. What
about the family one? Like, with people whose family, could you say something? I mean, I don't know. Like, my guess would be something like, my family love me, and they maybe don't understand how difficult the test is.
Yes.
But I will prove. I don't know. Like, what would you do?
No, I think one? I wanted to say something about family expectations. So I heard a lovely phrase recently, which is, "What you think of me is none of my business."
That's good.
But I mean, without being glib, what I want to say is, of course, people's families can be very sacrificing and dedicated, and really will sacrifice some things to support someone in education, and this can be serious business. But what I would say is that as a person in the world, your responsibility is to be the best version of you that you can be, and also to be honorable in your relationships. But other people's expectations are actually their psychological business. If people are walking around, for each of us, if we're walking around with lots of expectations of other people, we want someone else to fulfill our dream. This is really our inner work to do. This is our psychological burden and our business to look at. It's great to have hopes and ambitions and to support a young person's ambitions, but you could question, how fair is it to really place the burden of your expectation onto a young person? I would get people to think about that for themselves,
because it's like you said, if you're giving yourself the negative self-talk, you should say stop. It almost sounds to me that if you're getting that negative self-talk from other people, whether or not it's family members or friends, you almost, even if you can't physically say stop out loud, you can say to yourself, I'm not gonna, that's their view, but I'm not gonna listen.
Yes. And I mean, there are ways to say, I'm sorry that I'm not meeting what might be your expectations.
That's good.
It's I'm sorry that you might be suffering some disappointment. The fact is, they are suffering disappointment.
Right.
They are not having their expectation. Give it back to them gently. I'm sorry, at the moment, it looks like to you that I'm not meeting your expectations, or that I'm disappointing you. Not, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Like, it's, I'm sorry
that you are disappointed.
I'm sorry that you are disappointed. I'm sorry that your expectations are not being met. Then what you're doing is you're respecting their emotional reality. You're respecting their history, maybe burdens that were placed on them. You're respecting them, and you're not dissing them, and you're not rejecting them. You're just saying, go away with your, but you're also saying, this is your business, and I'm doing my very best. I'm doing my very best here. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, that's what always breaks my heart a little bit when I see people who are doing their very best, and I just think that is all you can do.
Yes.
And I get a bit emotional when I talk about that, because I just think it's so unfair when people are put already in a difficult situation, and then that is just layered with other people's expectation. It's very difficult.
You do your best in that moment. And if you're having a bad day, your best on that day might not be your best as good as your best on another day. Right. And that's just life.
Yes.
And it's all going to be like that.
Yes, and it's part of that winding path.
So I think catching threatening speech. So do the lists, write really take time to write the positive, really feel into what can you say that is truthful. I am still going for my dream, but I'm open to it happening in a different way, or you know, or and this was a useful step on the way. Yeah. And you can regret, you can be sorry that your family are disappointed, but make sure you place it with them. You don't take it on as part of your identity that you are a disappointment. How can a human being be a disappointment? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense linguistically or semantically, actually.
I love that.
It just doesn't make any, it's a nonsense sentence, actually, but we use it all the time. Oh, I'm a disappointment to my father.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
Your father's probably at root really glad you're still alive, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? He'd be more disappointed if you weren't there. Yeah.
Okay, this is all absolutely fantastic.
So the negative self-talk is really important because it affects our biology, it affects our brain activity, it affects our somatic state, and then it feeds the anxiety.
Yeah.
So don't threaten yourself. Don't be your inner bully.
Yes. And if anyone's listening to this and they make the list and they don't know how to change the negatives into positives, take a little photo, email it to me, and I'll find the positives for you, because I don't want anybody sat there with a list of negatives, which they aren't able to reframe. And maybe, sometimes I think maybe we do need a little bit sometimes of external help.
Very much so, yes.
That. It's hard to do all these things on our own
if the students have a WhatsApp group or something, they could help each other with this.
Yeah, right.
Chat about them. What's your worst one, and
have
a laugh about it.
That. Exactly. Maybe we should do that in the coffee point. Maybe we'll start a little sub-thread there of the negative things and how we've reframed them.
And the other thing is to separate, these are things you have learned and internalized. These are not core aspects of you as a human being. This dialogue has all been picked up from the world, from the media, from a teacher in a bad moment, from a parent in a bad moment, a grandparent, from a peer who was, they become an inner bully. So a fun thing to do is to draw a cartoon of your inner bully.
That's clever.
Are they wearing a fedora and smoking a cigar and sneering down at you? One woman drew hers in a tight black suit with black stiletto heels, really sneering. So think about it, separate yourself. It's my inner bully. It's not who I really am. I'm just a fountain of creativity. Who knows what my life is going to be.
Well, and I also think the people who are creative enough to build a really good inner bully are probably fantastically creative in other ways and could just
spot on
purpose that energy in another place,
Absolutely spot on. That's really accurate psychology. They've already been creative, so they could just apply it. And drawing a cartoon of your inner bully is quite fun as well, actually. And all the nasty things they say in their pocket and notes in their pocket. Oh, I think I'll give you, you're useless today. How about that?
Yeah, you'll never pass.
People say things to themselves they'd never say to another person or to a child. Think, would I say this to a child?
I sometimes think about that, actually.
Yeah.
That I'm so defensive of my friends and my family, but the things that I say to myself, I would never say to anybody else. It's so sad that we do that, isn't it? It's dangerous in that it affects you biologically. It affects your immune system. It affects all sorts of things. So it's good to catch it. So I think I should move on to tell you about some drawing exercises. Yes, I think that'd be a really great way for us to sort of wrap this up, because you are an art therapist. This is, as much as the breathing is great, art is what you do. So let's maybe finish then with some practical exercises. So I told you before the podcast started to get a bit of paper and a pen. So now's the time that you're going to need that. So Beverley, what's the first?
I'm going to introduce you to something, to just be simple, call it form drawing. You're going to be you're going to be making forms on the page. So if you have a pencil in both hands, it works very well. But if you haven't got two pens at the moment, just try it with one.
Yeah.
And I want you to just breathe. You can be quite floppy armed and you can sit back in your chair. And as you breathe out, I want you to just draw the lines out, like you're drawing the air coming out away from you. And then let your arms come back. And then draw the air coming out of you and let it come back. And you should end up with a sort of symmetrical, you can make it bigger and bigger. The joy of this is to get a really big piece of paper and make it really huge. You end up with butterfly shapes. But you may end up with sort of lines a bit like this.
Mine are a little bit more circular, but yes, very similar.
Yeah. So something like, but just as you breathe out, you just go, you let your arms slowly, like as if they are, the word drawing in English means to draw a mark or drag the pencil along the paper. It all means to draw breath. It's like pulling or pushing something. So you're drawing your breath out of you.
And is that similar to like the breathing slowly, that this sort of just encourages us to focus on our breath and not on...
Yeah, so just, and you can do these, a lot of lines on the paper, and you can really play and you can dance and you can get quite, you can elaborate it, you know, and it just make it fun, like a breathing drawing. I call them breathing drawings, and you end up with a kind of symmetrical form. But as you look at it, you know, neurologically, contemplating this symmetrical form and maybe some nice colors, something is happening back. It's a self-calming, self-soothing technique. Yeah,
that's a great one.
And to do it again and again, because repetition, humans like rhythm and repetition and curves. So think about rocking a baby. There's a curve of the arms and the curve of the arc of the cradle. There's the rhythm, and then there's maybe the lullaby, and there's repetition. You do it over and over. So rhythmic drawing to your breathing. It can go anywhere. You can do two arms in one direction. You can go anywhere with it. Play like a child.
Play is good.
So children do this kind of thing spontaneously, and you know how to do it. We just forget to do it.
Definitely.
So that's number one. Number two is, you've probably all drawn doodle spirals. Yeah.
I love a doodle spiral. Yeah.
Doodle spiral. You've probably also doodled, I can't really, if I can show you actually while I do it. I can show you something and do it at the same time. So I don't know if any of you do a doodle like this. Can you see?
Yes.
No.
So what Beverley's drawing is like, it's like a line which, how do I describe that?
It meanders, it swings back on itself, doesn't it?
It's a little bit, I'll take a picture and I'll put it up on the blog post. It's a little bit like the river, and then it goes from left to right, but then there's a loop at each end.
So if you swing your hand in a doodle.
That's very nice doing that. It feels very relaxing.
Yes. You can see it's the path the river takes. It's a meandering, it's an infinity symbol. At the bottom is a meander, it's backwards and forwards. And then it's a walking word. The word to meander means to walk kind of in a winding, indirect way. So this drawing like this, a lot of people, this is very self-soothing. Yes. So for anxiety, so I suggest, if you are an anxious person, carry a tiny little notepad, really small, or a pack of Post-it notes, those little square notes,
yes,
in your pocket, and a biro. And at any point, you can just do some of these. Go very slowly and let your body swing a little bit. Let your body sway with it, because this is self-soothing, rocking movement. But again, you end up, so in workshops, we do these very large scale, and I sometimes invite people, after they've done a lot and they've got bigger and bigger, I invite them to turn them into a landscape, a picture of a garden path, a picture of a river flowing to the sea. So to actually work on it and make it into a lovely image.
Yeah. But again, I mean, even doing it on this piece of paper just once, I mean, it is, once you get into the rhythm, and as you say, you start moving from side to side, it's a bit like hypnosis or something. You sort of start to feel very relaxed, and that is super simple. You could do that on the back of the test paper in the exam, between exams. If you're a bit stressed, that would just be something very short and simple.
So another one, spiral in and then turn and spiral out.
Oh, that's good.
Spiral in
and then back out again.
Pause and then spiral out. Another one, I don't know how familiar people are with this, but I haven't got an example at the moment of the ancient labyrinths, ancient labyrinth forms, where you walk in. So this isn't one, this is just a sort of simple spiral labyrinth. But in ancient sites, archaeological sites all over the world, you find these kinds of labyrinth forms where you have to walk a winding path that goes round. It goes round and round the center, and then you think you're getting to the middle, and then you go back again, and you think you're getting to, you go round and round and round and round and round. These are in land forms all over the planet, for people to walk, and they often have something ceremonial in the middle, like a fountain or a pool or a rose garden, or a statue. And they were used in lots of ancient rituals, but what is very nice is to draw your own, again, is to kind of imagine you're going on a path and you go right out here and then you go round and you come back. And again, I work a lot with the original labyrinth, the traditional labyrinth forms, but also I ask people to just sway their bodies and create one for themselves.
So without really thinking about like where the path is going, but just
imagine there's a windy path and you're going, and you're not going to get to the treasure yet. You're going to nearly to it, and you're going to come away, and then you're going up, and you can do all these things. I'm doing large. You can do tiny scale on tiny bits of paper that you can keep in your back pocket.
But I'm just thinking, these are the sorts of things I used to do as a kid, instinctively.
Yes.
When I was bored in a class, that's exactly the type of doodle that I would start doing. So it's obviously just something soothing, probably, about that naturally.
Yes. And the simplest of all is to just do one of these. Show you.
So Beverley's drawn a lovely smiley face.
Give yourself a smile. But I think that the rhythmic ones, they really work on your soma. They work on your body. So they will start. You will notice an immediate effect, which in the feedback is like, oh, I'm calming down. Oh, which makes you calm down more. And the thing is with the drawings is you can really practice these, and you can start to make yourself some nice ones, pin them up.
Yes.
Put them in your pocket, have them in a notebook, decorate them. They're ancient art forms, and they're precious. They have a history. So this isn't just vacuous. This is a big historical context. So, and I think for medics, read about the vagus nerve. Vagus Vagus, VAGUS, means wandering. It's the longest nerve, I believe, in the body. It goes right from the brain right down to the rectum and all the genitals, and right down the body. It connects, and what it does is it transmits information back to the brain. It picks up information from all the organs, and it takes this information back to the brain. So it'll tell your brain whether you're scared or whether you're whether you're picking up in too intense heat, there may be a fire, you should move. But vagus means wandering, and when the vagus nerve is calmed, we are calmed. So medics might like to learn about the medicine of the medical side of this, and the psychological side of this. So I was also thinking a more psychological, sort of cognitive way is to write letters to yourself. You could, if you're not feeling I don't want you to end up feeling suicidal or to take you further into despair, but if you're not, in a moment when you're feeling some equanimity, so you could write calm. You could write a letter to yourself from the age of 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, back to your current self to say, you never got that English exam, but I'm writing to tell you about some of the wonderful things you did, and I'm so happy. I'm 90 and I'm celebrating.
That's a great idea.
Amazing things you did, and amazing things that happened to you in your life.
That's a great idea, because I think it would open your imagination up to those other paths.
Definitely.
If you're feeling trapped, like this is the only door, that would be a wonderful way of just saying, well, okay, let's imagine that door never opens, but what else could there be?
Yes. You walked out of the exam and somebody said, something completely, somebody said, come to dinner and you'll meet, so this is not to kind of deflect from the importance of the exam, but the other thing is you can write to yourself from an older age as a kind mentor who has your very best interests at heart. So that's very important, because sometimes family and friends can try to be kind and helpful, but we can feel they don't have our best interests at heart, or they don't really understand what our best interests are. But deep inside yourself, imagine there's a kind mentor who has your best interests at heart, and they're going to write a letter to you. You're 20, you're 25, you're 30. I'd like to give you some advice. Because mixed up with all the negative stuff you've internalized and been conditioned to believe, you will have heard loads of good advice,
right,
which you've forgotten.
Yes.
So go hunting for it. Remember, where do you know there's some good tips? You know?
Yeah, this kind of ties in. I just think that so often it's just about, we just need to be kind to ourselves, you know? And I think
rule number one,
that letter where you are the kinder older person writing back to you is a great way of physically saying, you know what, I know it's difficult, but you are doing a lot of things well. So let's sit and recognize those things for 5 minutes rather than just the negative self-talk.
And, you know, or listing all the skills you've got and, you know, the things you're capable of. I mean, sometimes I ask people what they're good at. And sometimes, you know, girls quite often will say, well, I've got a nice smile. And then the whole group will have a conversation about, you know, I was really feeling at my wit's end, and I got on the bus, and just as I turned around, this person smiled at me. My whole day changed. Wow. So we talk about the power of, it's not a small thing, if that's one of your qualities, to use your smile, you know, like things you might be dismissing might be powerful forces in the world.
Amazing. You know? Yeah. I mean, Beverley, just thank you so much. I have learned so much in this last hour. I think I'm going to have to listen to this all over again to remind myself. It's kind of, I knew when I heard you the first time that it would be fantastic for us to have you on, but some of the things that you've touched upon were so sort of spookily accurate for what is happening with my students. So thank you so much.
Well, I wish you and I wish them all the very best. I've been trying very half-heartedly lately to learn Russian. And
have you?
Yes, but I actually, you know, I'm finding it very difficult. But then I look at English and I think it's a miracle anyone learns English, actually.
It is not an easy language to learn.
Incredibly difficult. Yeah, yes, incredibly difficult. Yes.
Okay.